Your thoughts on the state of the sport today would be what?
It's just different, you know. When I was competing, it was the sport was kind of doing this, you know. 76 Olympics with Dorothy Hamill kind of set the world on fire, and then Linda Fradiani was doing really well. Charlie Tickner won a world championship. I mean, there's always been a lot of success, but for whatever reason, Olympics was starting to do that as far as Winter Olympic viewership. What happened in Lake Placid was a springboard for a lot of great stuff, not only in hockey, you know, with the hockey team winning the gold medal, but Eric Heiden in speed skating and all the interest in the Winter Olympics. And then I had my time in '84, and then Boitano's in '88, and then you had, I mean, all these champions coming out like bam, 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 bam. And the business model back then was that you do as well as you can competitively, and then because of amateur rules, you're pretty much broke, so time to go to work, right? And you know, then new leadership came into the ISU in the mid-'90s, and that's when the sport was just absolutely everywhere. I mean, there's a primetime professional shows and competitions, and the world championships for the amateurs were on prime time, and nationals were on prime. I mean, everything was, figure skating was as hot as it's ever been.
Yeah, and it didn't hurt either that there was the Nancy Kerrigan, Tonya Harding.
See, that's a good question, because a lot of people think that was a boom. It's honestly what destroyed skating.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Okay, think about this. So you have the highest rated Olympics of all time. All the kind of the tabloid journalism that went into that Olympics that drove the short program in the ladies competition was the fourth most watched television program of all time. Okay, so then contracts are renegotiated for the U.S. Figure Skating Championships off those numbers and the World Figure Skating Championships. 10-year contracts, each for $100 million. So there's a lot of money going into the sport. The leader of the president of the ISU decided that, you know, now is the time for, you know, to create new opportunity for their skaters. And, you know, so what happened was no one ever really wanted to turn pro again because they didn't need to. They got the thrill of the Olympics. They've got, you know, all the respect of the athletic side of the sport. And so what happened was, under, you know, the kind of what the balance of what kept skating alive was the amateur and the professional. You know, amateurs would turn pro. Marquee and the pro side got huge. New champions would come in, new interest, new life, new all. But when they decided that they didn't really ever want anybody turning pro again, then new champions didn't come to the top. You know, there's a lot of things that didn't happen normally that would have. The professional side atrophied, and then the whole bottom fell out. Ratings went down. There was never, they were never going to be able to get the ratings to justify those kind of contracts. So all of that created an unstable economy, which just drove out the professionals, and then everything just sort of fell apart. I always tell people, when those $100 million television contracts came up, when they expired, what did they renew at?
It was nothing, right?
Zero.
Right.
So, you know, people are always saying, well, we need another. No, that was the worst thing that happened to the sport, because it created this false economy where it was really good before. And then it just turned everything upside down. And now professional skating barely exists. And people stay amateur competitive until they're no longer, you know, competitive. You know, they used to retire at the peak of their game. Now, you know, they just stay in because there's nothing else to do. And so, you know, for me, it's really been, you know, the worst thing that could have happened to the sport.
There was a Chicago Tribune article a couple of years back where the
Bill
headline
Hirsch,
read, U.S. figure skating, a shadow of itself, precipitous slide in interest, attendance, and TV ratings, has former and current stars wondering if the sport can recover. What do you think?
Hey, I'm Mr. Optimist. You know, I always see good in everything, and I think that where there's void, there's opportunity. I think a lot of things are cyclical. I think that when, you know, things get to a certain level, people are going to want change desperately, and they're going to force change. So that means that it could be anything. It could be the most compelling story coming out of an Olympic Games, because it's always, that's the catalyst for interest. And they decide, you know what? I've done everything I want to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to build something. And that's where the growth can happen again, because if someone could just sort of ride a little bit on their coattails, then the sport can start to grow again. All these new opportunities can start happening. There'd be broader interest, fringe interest, and the business of skating can get back on track. But it'll never happen if all our eggs are in one basket. And so I'm waiting. You know, I see a lot of people that are really hungry for opportunity, and you know, I'll mentor anybody that'll listen.
What changes would you make to, you know, professional figure skating today, or rather the whole system?
You know, again, it's not a big change. You know, so much of our psyche is about, let's just legislate something, and that'll create, you know, change.
Well, I know you don't love like the scoring system.
Well, the
as an
scoring
example.
system, actually, I think it does what it's supposed to do. And I think that's the reality we live in now. It's, you know, I'm not going to be the grumpy old man that says, oh, when I went to school, I walked through snow 40 feet deep, and nothing like that. It's like, this is the world we live in now. We can look back on, oh, they probably shouldn't have eliminated figures, because that created this. And if they only would, if they didn't go there with that. And in the judging scandal in 2002, if they'd only changed the way they select the judges, all that, you know, it's all these little things, these little forks in the road that, you know, is always kind of, oh, no, not that way, come back. We're going to go this way.
Right.
There's a lot of that, you know, and everybody had their fish to fry, and they all wanted things the way, you know, each of those people that are in the decision-making process, they had their way of doing things. And I respect them. I like everybody. I don't say they're the enemy. No, it's just that's the way they saw it at the time. And when you do a lot of like the massive legislation thing, there's always unintended consequence that comes with that. And so all these things they thought were really going to be in the best interest of the industry were an oops, in my opinion. You know, I debate this with anybody, but you know, when you change the economics of skating the way it was changed so drastically, you know, the bottom fell out.